I want to start today with a visual. I want you to close your eyes for a second, unless you're driving, obviously, and just imagine a hospital floor.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's the year 2030. You walk past the nurse's station, and the lights are on. You can hear the monitors beeping, but it's quiet.
Too quiet.
Too quiet.
Yeah.
You look at that big whiteboard where they write the nurses' names, the assignment board, and there are just gaps.
Wow.
Whole wings of the hospital are unstaffed. Rooms 300 through 310 are just dark. Now, this isn't a scene from some disaster movie.
No.
It's not a post-apocalyptic novel. This is the mathematical reality that we're barreling toward. We are looking at a global shortage of 9 million nurses.
9 million. It's a number so big it almost loses meaning, doesn't it?
It does.
It sounds totally abstract, like trying to picture the national debt or, the distance to the sun.
It really does, until you bring it down to the unit level. Even just here in the U.S., the HRSA, that's the Health Resources and Services Administration, they're predicting a shortage of over 78,000 full-time RNs by 2025.
Which is basically today. We're there.
We are there.
Yeah.
But here is the thing that, it just frustrates me about these numbers. We always talk about shortages like it's a weather event.
Right.
Like a drought that just happened to us. Like we just woke up one day and poof, the nurses had evaporated.
As if it's an act of God, yeah. But they didn't evaporate.
No.
They left. And they are continuing to leave.
Exactly. And that distinction is just, it's vital. We aren't just lacking bodies. We are hemorrhaging talent. We're dealing with burnout, with moral distress, and a retention crisis that, COVID-19 didn't create it, but it certainly poured gasoline on the fire.
A whole tanker truck of gasoline, I'd say.
Right. And the data, which we are going to tear apart today, it suggests that one of the primary drivers, the thing that pushes a nurse to finally hand in that resignation letter, is leadership.
Or the lack of it.
The lack of it. And we're not just talking about, my boss is mean.
No, it's much deeper than that. We're talking about a fundamental, a systemic failure in how we define, how we teach, and then how we execute leadership in the clinical setting.
So that's the mission for this deep dive. We're looking at a study by Deanna, Boyd, and Levitt that basically puts the nursing brain under a microscope. It's fascinating. They compared the leadership priorities of the nurse at the bedside, the undergraduate BSN student, against the nurse in the boardroom.
The graduate master's student.
Exactly. And the gap they found between those two groups, it explains almost everything about why our healthcare system is fracturing.
It's such a clever study because it uses the AONL competencies. That's the American Organization for Nursing Leadership Framework. It uses that as a ruler.
Okay.
And what they found is that the people doing the work and the people managing the work are, for all intents and purposes, speaking two completely different languages.
And if we don't teach them to speak the same language, well, those 9 million empty spots are going to become a reality.
That's the risk.
So let's get into the data. But before we dive into the specific domains, I think we need to set the stage with who exactly we are talking about here. Because the word student can be a little misleading.
It really can be. When we say undergraduate nursing student in this study, or the BSN group, we're not talking about a 19-year-old sophomore who's never touched a patient.
Right, these aren't kids.
Not at all. These were 60 students in what's called an RN to BSN program.
Can you translate that for the non-medical listener?
Yeah.
What exactly is an RN to BSN?
Sure. So these are people who are already registered nurses. They're RNs. They have an associate's degree or maybe a diploma in nursing. They've already passed their board exams.
So they're working.
They are actively working in hospitals, clinics, long-term care facilities right now. They are the boots on the ground.
Okay.
They are returning to school to get their Bachelor of Science in Nursing, the BSN. So they're working these grueling 12-hour shifts, dealing with patients, and then going home to write papers about leadership theory. They represent the micro view, the immediate minute-by-minute reality of care.
Got it. So they are the exhausted pragmatists. And then on the other side, we have the macro group.
Right. This is the MS group, 52 students in a nursing administration program. Now, some of these folks might still be working at the bedside part-time, but their headspace is completely different.
How so?
They are training to be executives. They're studying to become nurse managers, directors of nursing, or even chief nursing officers, the CNOs. Their world is strategy, policy, budgets, and systems.
So we have the present reality of care versus the future strategy of care. And to compare them, the researchers used this AONL framework. You called it a ruler a minute ago. Why is that specific framework so important? Why not just ask them a broad question like, what is good leadership?
Because what is leadership is
Yeah.
just, it's too vague. You'd get a thousand different answers. You'd get things like being nice or being strong.
Right, very subjective.
Very. The AONL competencies, on the other hand, are the gold standard for nurse executives. You could think of it like the periodic table for nursing leadership. It breaks this huge, nebulous job down into 5 distinct, measurable domains.
And what are those 5?
They are communication and relationship building, knowledge of the healthcare environment, leadership, professionalism, and finally, business skills and principles.
Wow, okay, so it covers everything from how you talk to a grieving family
Uh-huh.
all the way to how you manage a multi-million-dollar operating budget.
Exactly. It provides a common language and a common set of expectations.
And those 5 domains are going to be our roadmap for this entire deep dive. We're going to walk through them one by one. And I have to tell you, the differences between how these two groups see these domains, well, let's just say there were some serious aha moments for me.
Sure.
And a few moments where I just wanted to yell at the paper.
I know the feeling. There are definitely some alarming gaps that we're going to uncover.
All right, let's jump into the first one. Deep dive segment 1, the foundation, communication, and relationships. This is domain 1 in that AONL framework. Now, looking at the raw numbers, this looks like a win.
It does on the surface.
A solid 55% of the BSN students listed communication as a top priority. And for the master's students, it was even higher, almost 88%.
Which makes total sense. I mean, communication is the absolute lifeblood of nursing. You cannot deliver safe care if you are not talking to each other, to patients, to families. It's the core of everything.
And you have to remember the context here, too. A lot of this data reflects the reality of post-COVID healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
We saw how masks and social distancing and just the sheer chaos of the pandemic really damaged relationships and made clear communication incredibly difficult.
Oh, it was a nightmare. So it's no surprise that everyone agrees. We need to talk better.
But, and this is where I want to push back on that happy path narrative, they aren't talking about the same kind of communication, are they?
Not even close.
If you look at the qualitative data, the actual words these students use, you realize they are not talking about the same thing at all. It's a classic case of using the same word to mean 2 radically different actions.
No, not at all. And this is our very first glimpse of that critical micro versus macro divide. Let's look at the BSN perspective first. When they talk about communication, they are very, very focused on the individual interaction.
Okay, break that down for us. What does communication mean to that BSN student, the one scrubbing in at 7 a.m.?
For the BSN student, communication is a task. It's transactional and it's relational. Their quotes were things like, have open and honest communication with staff.
Okay, sounds good.
And another one was, employees like to be heard. It's all very immediate. It's about the person standing directly in front of you.
It's like a firefighter on the radio. They need clear, direct instructions.
That's a great way to put it. It's go here, do this. I am listening to you. It's about survival and validation in the moment. It's about getting through the next 12 hours.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
If I'm drowning in patient care, if my assignment feels unsafe, I want a leader who listens to me right then and there. It feels like good leadership. It's about validation. My manager listens to me when I say I'm drowning. It's about making the individual feel valued in that specific high-stress moment.
Exactly. The thought process is, I need to talk to my team so we can get through this shift. Full stop.
Okay, so that's the BSN view. Communication is a task to build a relationship with the person right next to you in the trenches. How does the master's group see it?
Well, for the MS students, the future executives, communication shifts from being a task to being a strategy.
A strategy.
Yes. They aren't just talking about listening to one person. They're talking about setting the tone for the entire organization. They used much bigger, more abstract phrases.
Like what?
Things like be visionary or harness emotional intelligence and establish a culture of trust.
Okay, but isn't that a bit abstract? A little corporate? I mean, if I'm a nurse on the floor with 6 crashing patients, visionary culture doesn't help me pass my meds. It sounds like buzzword soup.
To the bedside nurse, it often does sound like buzzword soup, and that is exactly the friction point. You just nailed it. The BSN student is saying, I need you to hear my specific grievance about staffing today. The MS leader is thinking, I am creating a culture where we value transparency and psychological safety in general.
And so the BSN nurse feels ignored because the leader is speaking in these macro concepts.
And the leader feels the BSN nurse is being too myopic, too focused on the immediate problem to see the bigger picture.
It's like a marriage where one person is talking about who is doing the dishes tonight,
Hmm.
and the other person is talking about the 5-year plan for the relationship.
That is a perfect analogy.
Both are important conversations, but if you aren't having the same one at the same time, you're just going to fight.
That's it exactly. The MS students are thinking about establishing trust at scale. They are asking, how do I use communication as a tool to shape the culture of this entire hospital? So while the BSN is thinking, I need my manager to hear me, the MS student is thinking, I need to create a system where everyone feels safe to speak up.
That's a critical distinction.
Mm-hmm.
But there was something missing here that the study pointed out, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Something the BSNs left out entirely from this domain.
Yes, and this is quite telling. The BSN students did not mention diversity, community involvement, or academic relationships. Not once.
0 mentions of diversity in this day and age.
Yeah.
I find that really hard to believe, especially given how much emphasis is placed on diversity, equity, and inclusion in nursing school curricula.
It's shocking on the surface.
Every hospital has a DEI committee. Every school has a DEI statement.
Yeah.
Are they just tuning it out?
I really don't think it's malice, and I don't think they're ignoring it because they don't care. I think it comes down to bandwidth.
Okay.
We have to speculate on the why here, but remember who these students are. They are working nurses. They're likely exhausted. When you are in the trenches focused on keeping a patient alive during your shift, your focus it narrows.
It's tunnel vision.
It's tunnel vision born of necessity. You are looking at your immediate team, your immediate patient, the fire that's burning right in front of you.
So things like community outreach or building academic partnerships feel like luxuries. They feel like things people in offices with windows worry about.
Exactly. When you are doing CPR, you are not thinking about the hospital's strategic relationship with the local university. You are thinking about the rhythm on the monitor.
Of course.
The problem, though, is that if the future leaders, these BSNs who might get promoted to charge nurse or manager, if they aren't thinking about diversity or community, that's a massive blind spot they carry with them.
A really significant one. And it highlights why that transition from the bedside to the boardroom is so incredibly difficult. You have to lift your head up from the patient in front of you and look at the whole community, the whole system.
And if you don't, you end up with leaders who might be great at clinical tasks, but are terrible at managing a diverse workforce or engaging with the community they serve.
Which leads right back to the retention crisis we started with. If people don't feel seen or included, they leave.
Simple as that.
Let's move on to the second domain we're covering. Deep Dive Segment 2, Leadership Styles and the Team. This is Domain 3 in the framework.
And this was another heavy hitter. Over 50% of both groups focused heavily on leadership itself as a core priority. No surprise there.
Right. But again, just like with communication, the flavor of leadership they prioritized was very, very different.
A night and day difference, really.
Let's start with the BSNs again. If I had to sum up their vibe in one word, based on the quotes in the study, it would be teamwork.
Absolutely. The BSN focus is on the team player. They are, for lack of a better word, obsessed with the idea of the team. Their quotes were all about things like advocate for your team, show respect, be consistent and fair.
It sounds like they are describing the kind of person you want in a foxhole with you.
That is exactly the analogy I would use. Don't leave me behind, have my back.
Yeah.
This reflects a style we call relational leadership. It's all about social interconnectivity. It's about surviving the shift together. You have to remember, nursing is the ultimate team sport. You cannot turn a 300-pound patient by yourself. You can't run a code alone. You can't transfer a critical patient to the ICU alone. You rely on the people around you for everything.
So for the BSN, leadership isn't some abstract strategy on a PowerPoint slide. It's, are you going to help me when things get tough? Are you going to be nice to me while we're doing it?
That's the core of it. And the study mentioned a hidden subtext here too, which is important, about incivility.
Which is the polite academic word for bullying.
Exactly. The intense emphasis on show respect and be consistent and fair is likely a direct reaction to the presence of bullying or incivility in the workplace. We've all heard that terrible stereotype, nurses eat their young.
Mm-hmm. It's awful, but it persists.
It persists for a reason. So when BSNs emphasize respect, they are essentially pleading, please just stop the toxicity, let us work together in peace. They are craving psychological safety.
So the BSNs are looking for a relational leader.
Yeah.
Someone who has their back, who protects the team. Now, what about the MS students? They aren't in the foxhole in quite the same way.
No, their perspective is from the command tent, looking at the whole battlefield. The MS focus is on the change agent. They don't talk about teamwork nearly as much. they talk about transformation.
Their quotes were so different. They said things like, lead through transition periods. And my favorite, monitor and control strategic momentum.
Right.
Strategic momentum.
Yeah.
That sounds very corporate. What does that actually mean in a hospital setting?
It sounds corporate, but it's vital. This is systems thinking in a nutshell. While the BSN sees a problem on the unit like, we're short-staffed tonight, the MS student is being trained to see how that staffing problem connects to the budget,
Which connects to the hospital's recruitment strategy.
which connects to the local nursing school's graduation rates, which connects to the entire healthcare system. They're looking at the whole mechanism of change. They aren't just trying to survive this shift. They're trying to fix the machine so the next shift is better.
So, to put it simply, BSNs want to survive the shift.
Yeah.
MS students want to change the system.
A perfect summary.
But there was a glaring hole in this domain for both groups. And this one really worried me. Succession planning.
This is a critical finding. Succession planning was barely mentioned by the MS students. Only about 18.5% of them brought it up.
Which is low for a group of future leaders.
Very low. And for the BSNs, it was almost completely non-existent. Only 11% mentioned it.
Why is that so dangerous? I mean, if I'm a busy nurse, why should I care about who replaces my boss? That seems like an HR problem.
Because if we aren't actively training the next leader, the shortage cycle we're in just continues forever. It's a doom loop.
Okay.
We already established we have a crisis in leadership right now. If the current leaders aren't actively looking for and grooming their replacements from the talent on their units, who is going to lead in 2030? Who is going to manage those 9 million missing nurse spots?
It feels like everyone is so focused on the fire burning right in front of them that nobody is checking to see if the fire station is staffed for next year.
That's a great way to put it. And I wonder, this is speculation, but is it possible they don't want to be leaders?
What do you mean?
Well, the source material links this back to that concept of toxic leadership again. Think about it. If you look at your manager, and your manager is stressed out, burned out, micromanaging people, dealing with angry staff all day long, do you want that job?
Absolutely not. I would run the other way as fast as I could.
Exactly. Toxic behaviors, the narcissism, the micromanaging, they lead to silence and resignation. If you have a toxic leader, you are not inspired to become a leader yourself. You just want to leave the profession.
So the lack of focus on succession planning might just be a symptom of a culture where leadership looks deeply unappealing?
It looks like a punishment, not a promotion.
That is a really depressing thought.
Yeah.
I don't want your job because I see what it's due to you.
Precisely. And that is a cycle that we absolutely have to break. If we don't make leadership look like a sustainable, rewarding path, the best nurses will stay at the bedside. Which is great for their individual patients in the short term, but it's a disaster for the system in the long term because it means we end up with bad managers who perpetuate the cycle.
Okay, let's move to Deep Dive Segment 3. This is Domain 2, the knowledge gap, specifically about the healthcare environment. Now, you would think knowledge would be high on the list for any group of students, right?
Do you think so?
I mean, they are in school, they are paying tuition to get knowledge.
You would think it would be number one. But this was probably the biggest shocker in the study for me.
It was stunning. Very few students in either group prioritized knowledge of the healthcare environment. We're talking only 12% of BSNs and less than 10% of the MS students.
It's an incredibly low number.
Do they just not care about knowing things? Are they just winging it out there? What's going on?
I don't think it's that they don't care. I think it's more likely that they view clinical knowledge as a given. It's the baseline. It's table stakes.
So it's assumed.
It's assumed. You don't list know how to start an IV or know how to calculate a medication dosage as a leadership tip because it's assumed you already know that to even walk in the building. They seem to be prioritizing the soft skills, the communication, the leadership style, over the technical governance and policy side of things.
But even within that small percentage of students who did mention knowledge, there was a split in what kind of knowledge they cared about.
A very telling split. The BSNs who did mention knowledge were laser-focused on patient safety and risk management.
Very clinical.
Extremely clinical. They said things like, never stop evaluating your skills. Again, very immediate. The core message is, don't kill the patient.
Which is a good message.
A very good message.
Yeah.
But a very narrow one.
And the MS students, what was their focus?
They focused on performance improvement and outcomes. They said things like, analyze situations to eliminate the gap between the current and desired state. It's all about metrics. It's about looking at data to drive change across the system.
And this is the part of the study that made me stop and reread the page. Evidence-based practice and research. EBP. The BSN score was
0.
0. Not a single BSN student listed research or evidence-based practice as a key leadership tip.
It's mind-boggling.
How is that even possible? We talk about evidence-based practice constantly in healthcare. It's hammered into students from day one. It's on every syllabus.
We do, and BSNs are taught it. They take entire classes on it. They have to write research papers. But this finding suggests a huge, massive disconnect.
It's a disconnect.
They see research as homework. They see it as an academic exercise you do to pass a class. They do not see it as a leadership tool to be used on the unit.
That is a major red flag for nursing education, isn't it?
It is a giant, flashing neon red flag. If your frontline leaders, your charge nurses, your team leads don't see data and research as the primary way to solve problems, then what are they using?
Guesswork.
Guesswork. Or worse, they're just doing things the way we've always done them around here. And that is how you get stagnation. That is how you get poor patient outcomes. Leadership isn't just about being nice. It's about making smart, difficult decisions based on the best available evidence. If BSNs aren't making that connection, we are failing them in their education, period.
So they view research as a hoop they have to jump through for a grade, not as a flashlight to help them see in the dark.
That is a beautiful way to put it, yes. And on the flip side of that, the MS students scored very low on governance, only about 20%. Which suggests that even the future executives aren't fully grasping the concept of shared governance.
And what is shared governance?
It's the idea that nurses at all levels should have a real voice and a real vote in the decision-making structure of the hospital. It's about partnership.
And the MS students are missing that.
The low score suggests they're more focused on managing from the top down, not necessarily on governing collaboratively with their staff. So it seems like there are blind spots all over the map here.
Definitely. Let's go to Deep Dive Segment 4. Professionalism, the self versus the career. This is Domain 4.
Right, and this domain is all about how you carry yourself as a professional and how you plan for your future.
For the BSNs, we had a 35% response rate here, which is decent. And 100% of those responses, literally all of them, focused on one single thing: personal and professional accountability.
Again, you just have to look at the quotes they used. Be open to constructive criticism. Have confidence in yourself.
Treat others as you would like to be treated. It sounds like the golden rule from kindergarten.
It does. And the interpretation here is that the BSN leader is focused on surviving the moment with their integrity intact. They want to do the right thing. They want to be accountable for their actions on this specific shift. It's very present focused.
I just want to end this shift knowing I did a good job and treated people well.
That's the mindset. But then we look at the MS students. They had a lower response rate overall in this domain, only 17%, but a totally different focus.
Their focus was on career planning.
Right. They're saying things like, continuously seek opportunities to teach by example. And they're looking at the long game, their own trajectory.
And here is the stat that just perfectly illustrates the gap between the two groups. Only one single BSN student mentioned career planning. One. Out of 60. That's less than 2% of the group.
And this is where context is everything. We can't understand that number without talking about a specific piece of legislation.
Okay.
These are RN to BSN students. And the study took place in New York State. In New York, there's a law that's often called BSN in 10.
BSN in 10. What's that?
It requires nurses to get their Bachelor of Science in Nursing within 10 years of their initial licensure in order to keep their license to practice.
Oh, wow. I did not realize that. So they aren't necessarily in school because they have some burning desire to climb the corporate ladder.
Many aren't, no. They are in school because the state has told them, if you do not do this, we are taking your license away.
So they are focused on retention, just keeping their current role, rather than on advancement. They aren't thinking, how do I become the chief nursing officer one day? They're thinking, how do I not get fired in 5 years?
Exactly. And that completely explains the career planning void. It turns higher education into a compliance task. It's just a box you have to check so you can keep your job.
But what's the long-term implication of that? If your whole workforce is just running on a treadmill to stay in place.
Then they stagnate. Or they get frustrated and burn out and leave the profession entirely.
Because they don't see a path forward.
Exactly. If leadership doesn't show them the ladder, if we don't actively say, hey, there is a future for you here beyond just surviving this shift, beyond just complying with this law, then we lose them. We have to help them see that a career is more than just maintaining a license. It's about growth and contribution.
This brings us to the final domain, And honestly, I think this is the one that blew my mind the most. I saved it for last because I think it is the most important piece of this entire puzzle. Deep dive segment 5, the AHA, moment business skills, domain 5.
This is the crux of the entire problem right here.
I'm just going to drop the statistic. 0%. 0% of BSN students mentioned business skills or principles. Not a single word about finance, not about HR, not about strategy, nothing.
It is such a stark finding, just complete and total silence on the business front from the entire undergraduate group.
And you contrast that with the MS students. They had a 40% response rate in this domain, with a huge focus on strategic management. 90% of those responses were about strategy.
So you have the future executives thinking almost exclusively about strategy and business, and the frontline nurses thinking about it not at all. A complete disconnect.
I want to play devil's advocate here for a second, because I can hear a listener, maybe a patient, saying, good. I don't want my nurse worrying about the stock market. I don't want them worrying about the budget. I want them worrying about my blood pressure. I want them to care about me. Why is this lack of business knowledge actually a danger to the patient?
That is the common misconception, and it's a dangerous one, that care and business are opposites. That if you care about money, you can't possibly care about people. But let's play this out. Let's say you are a charge nurse, a BSN leader on a busy hospital floor. You are short-staffed, your team is burning out, and you know patient care is slipping. You know it's unsafe. You need to go to administration and ask for 5 more nurses.
Okay, let's role play this. I'm the charge nurse. I walk into your office. You're the C-suite. You're the suits.
Follow-ups. Okay.
And I say, we are drowning out there. It's unsafe. My team is crying in the break room. We're exhausted. We need help. You have to hire more people. What's your response?
Okay, so acting as the administrator, I hear you. I empathize. I know it's hard, but I have a fixed budget for this fiscal year. I have the board of directors breathing down my neck about rising costs. Crying in the break room is not a metric I can put on a spreadsheet to justify a massive new expense. So I say, I know everyone is working so hard. We appreciate you so much, but we just don't have the budget right now. Try to prioritize your care. End of meeting.
And I leave that meeting absolutely furious.
Yeah.
I feel unheard. I feel like you don't care about patients. You only care about money. And I go back to my team and say, management doesn't care. They said, no, we're on our own.
And the cycle of burnout and resentment just continues to spin. You feel I'm a greedy corporate stooge. I feel you don't understand financial reality. Now rewind the tape. Let's do that same conversation, but this time, teach me the business skills version.
Okay, same scenario.
Yeah.
But this time, I've been taught to speak your language. I know the business. I walk into your office and I say, we need to open 5 new full-time nurse positions for our unit. Currently, we're running at a 15% overtime usage rate because of the staffing shortage. That is costing the hospital an extra $40,000 a month in overtime premiums alone. Furthermore, our 30-day readmission rate for heart failure patients has ticked up by 2%, likely due to rush discharges and a lack of patient education time. That is putting $100,000 of our Medicare reimbursement at risk due to federal penalties. Hiring 5 nurses will cost the hospital $30,000 a month in new salary, but it saves us $140,000 in overtime and penalties. We literally can't afford not to hire them.
Whoa. Okay. That is a total different conversation.
Yeah.
As the administrator, my ears immediately perk up. You're not talking about feelings. You're talking about the bottom line. You haven't just brought me a problem. You brought me a financially sound solution. You've shown me how spending money will save the hospital money. I can take that to the board. I can sign off on that.
So in the first scenario, I was pleading. In the second, I was negotiating.
Exactly. By ignoring business skills, by having this cultural 0% blind spot, nurses are essentially silencing themselves. They are rendering themselves voiceless in the very rooms where the most important decisions are made. They are bringing a knife to a spreadsheet fight.
And that creates this incredibly toxic us versus them narrative that poisons so many hospitals.
It tears organizations apart. The bedside nurses think management only cares about money. The managers think the nurses don't understand reality.
When the reality is, you need both.
You need both. There's an old saying in healthcare, no margin, no mission. You can't care for patients if the hospital goes bankrupt and closes its doors. But because we train BSNs to focus purely on the clinical, and we train MS students to focus on the executive, we are actively creating this silo. We're building the wall between them.
We are training them to speak different languages from day one, and then we act surprised when they can't understand each other.
It's a self-inflicted wound. Financial literacy has to be brought down to the BSN level. It has to be taught at the unit level. Nurses need to understand why decisions are made. Why can't we use the expensive dressing on every single patient? Well, let's look at the cost versus the clinical benefit. When you understand the why, it's less frustrating. You might still not like the decision, but you aren't just feeling like a victim of a faceless, greedy administration.
There's a great quote from an MS student in this study that summed this up. They advised merging nursing knowledge with administrative skills to drive the business of care delivery. I love that phrase, drive the business of care delivery.
It's so empowering. It says, I am not just a worker bee in this system. I am a driver of this business. That's a powerful shift in mindset.
So we've laid out the problem in detail. We have a massive shortage looming. We have a gap in communication styles. We have a lack of succession planning. We have a void in business skills. Now we need to talk about solutions. Let's move to the synthesis, shaping education to solve the shortage.
We have to connect all these dots back to retention. Let's go back to the intro. The facts are clear. Employees with effective leaders are happier and more engaged. Disengaged nurses are 2.2 times more likely to leave their jobs. Toxic leadership is a direct predictor of a nurse's intent to leave.
So fixing this educational gap isn't just some abstract academic exercise.
No, it is a survival strategy for the entire profession.
So based on this study, what needs to change in nursing school? Let's start with the BSNs. If you were redesigning the undergraduate curriculum, what would you add?
First and foremost, we have to stop treating business as a dirty word in nursing education. It's not. We need to teach basic finance, budgeting, and healthcare economics in the undergraduate curriculum, not to turn them into accountants.
But to turn them into advocates.
Exactly. Give them the ammunition, teach them how to read a unit budget, teach them what an FTE is, basic stuff.
Okay, what else?
Secondly, we have to teach systems thinking much, much earlier. Don't wait until a master's degree program to teach a nurse how the hospital system actually works. We need to help them see beyond the walls of their one unit. Help them understand how their actions, how using too many supplies here impacts the budget over there.
And what about for the master's students? The future executives, what do they need?
They need a huge focus on succession planning. It has to be a core competency. They need to be taught that a primary part of their job is identifying and mentoring their replacement. Who comes next?
What else?
And we have to reinforce shared governance. We need to teach them they can't just lead from the top down. They have to build structures where the bedside nurses have a real vote and a real voice in policy. They need to learn how to listen to that micro view without dismissing it as trivial.
This study also mentioned some pedagogical tools, some ways to actually teach this stuff. Because I have to be honest, a lecture on healthcare finance sounds incredibly boring.
It does. The study itself used reflection, which is what generated all this amazing data. Just asking students to stop and think, what is important to me as a leader, is a powerful tool. But we also desperately need more simulation. We use simulation for clinical skills all the time. We have them practice on a dummy. Here's how you insert a catheter. Why on earth are we not using simulation for leadership skills?
That's a fantastic idea. Let's simulate that budget meeting we just role-played. Let's simulate a difficult conversation with a toxic, bullying employee.
Exactly. Let's have them practice the hard conversations and the business scenarios in a safe environment where the stakes are low before we throw them into the fire. Let them fail in the classroom so they can succeed in the hospital.
This has been such an eye-opening look at the profession. I feel like we started with this scary, overwhelming number 9 million missing nurses, but the study gives us a roadmap to at least start fixing the problem.
It really does. It all starts with education. It starts with closing that gap between the micro and the macro. It starts with respecting the task, but teaching the strategy.
Yeah. So to wrap this all up, let's just quickly summarize the key takeaways from our deep dive today.
Sure. We saw that communication is priority number 1 for everyone, but BSNs view it as a task, a radio check for the shift, while MS students view it as a long-term strategy for creating culture.
Right. We saw that BSNs value teamwork and relational leadership surviving together in the foxhole, while MS students value transformation and systems change.
We saw a really dangerous lack of focus on knowledge and research as actual leadership tools, that EBP is just homework problem.
And we saw that BSNs are focused on professional accountability, on just keeping their jobs, while MS students are looking ahead and planning careers. And finally, the big one.
The business skills gap. That massive 0% for BSNs, which leaves them powerless in key conversations.
And we learned that the AONL framework is a really useful diagnostic tool to spot these gaps. It's not just some academic checklist, it's a way to see where our blind spots are.
It shows us exactly where we are failing to prepare our nurses for the complex reality of modern healthcare.
So here is the provocative thought for you, the listener, to walk away with today. We often think of leadership as a soft skill. We think of it as being nice, or listening well, or just being a people person.
But this study really flips that entire idea on its head. It suggests that true leadership, the kind of leadership that actually keeps nurses in the profession, the kind that prevents burnout, requires hard skills too. It requires understanding the money. It requires understanding the strategy. It requires understanding the system. Being nice is not enough to save the workforce.
So the question for you is this. If you are a leader in nursing, or honestly in any field, are you just managing the shift? Are you just trying to get to the end of the day without a disaster? Or are you governing the environment? Are you actively shaping the world that your team works in every single day?
And if you don't know the difference between managing the shift and governing the environment, is that maybe why your team is burning out?
That is the question to chew on. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
See you next time.